Even though we are in the 21st century, sometimes criminal technologies cannot provide us with sufficient evidence to explain how a crime was committed. The fact that a long time has passed since the murder scene has been damaged, or there are no eyewitnesses makes things even more complicated. In the world an unsolved murder in Turkey, there are many murder cases that have occurred and therefore their files have not been closed. Some of these cases are full of mystery from top to bottom. An incident that took place in Nantes, France in 2011 is one of these mysterious cases. In 2011, the Dupont de Ligonnès family of 6 disappeared along with their 2 dogs. The family's bodies were found a few days after the incident. However, one of them was missing. Let's see details about this gruesome murder in the video below. In the early days of April 2011, a profound silence descended upon the usually lively household at 55 Boulevard Robert Schumann in the residential neighborhood of Nantes, France. The shutters of the home belonging to the Dupont de Ligonnès family remained firmly closed, a stark contrast to the family's typical open-door policy even when away on vacation. This uncharacteristic stillness did not go unnoticed by the concerned neighbors, who were accustomed to the sounds of the 4 Dupont de Ligonnès children and the family's 2 dogs filling the air around the property. Alarmed by the eerie quiet, the neighbors promptly alerted the local police, fearing that some grave misfortune may have befallen the family. Upon the initial inspection, the officers found no trace of the Dupont de Ligonnès, leaving them puzzled and unsettled by the mysterious circumstances. It was not until the 5th visit that the authorities made a horrific discovery, unveiling a disturbing narrative that stretched back decades. The Dupont de Ligonnès family is a large family with parents and 4 children. The father was Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, Count, and mother Agnès Dupont de Ligonnès was extremely religious and worked at a Catholic school. His father was an aristocrat, and the title of Earl was passed down to him from his father. Despite inheriting his father's noble title, Xavier showed little interest in upholding French traditions, instead becoming fascinated by luxury, high-end automobiles, and the eccentricities of American culture, and Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès introduced himself as a successful businessman. Children of Xavier, the ages of Arthur, Thomas, Anne, and Benedict range from 13 to 20. Arthur is 20 years old and is studying computer engineering at a private Catholic school. He is also working in a pizzeria. Thomas is 18 years old, studying at a private school and loves music. Anne, she is 16 years old this year. She is doing well in school and is working as a catalog photographer. Benedict is only 13 years old, the youngest child in the family. In 1974, while vacationing on the paradisiacal island of Bréa, the young Xavier met Emmanuel Tenure, with whom he formed a deep bond of mutual understanding that would last throughout their lives. 2 years later, Xavier crossed paths with Agnès Hohner, a girl born on November 9, 1962, in the Parisian suburb of Neuilly-sur-Seine, who stood out for her own profound religious convictions. As the story of the Dupont de Ligonnès family unfolded, the authorities were left to unravel the complex web of secrets, beliefs, and relationships that had culminated in the eerie silence now enveloping the once vibrant household. Agnès Hohner, a woman deeply devoted to her Catholic faith, worked as an assistant at the Blanche de Castile Catholic School in Nantes, where her responsibilities included teaching catechism. Though little is known about her family background, it is well documented that Agnès and Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès developed a close relationship, leading to a passionate but brief romance before they went their separate ways in 1990. Shortly after, Agnès gave birth to her first child, Arthur, from a casual relationship. However, Xavier and Agnès soon rekindled their love and decided to marry, with Xavier formally adopting Arthur as his own son. 2 years later, the couple welcomed their first child together, Thomas, the heir to the Dupont de Ligonnès family name. To commemorate the occasion, Xavier chose his longtime friend, Emmanuel Teneur, to be Thomas's godfather. Following Thomas, the couple had 2 more children, Anne and Benoit, creating a family of 6 that appeared to embody the ideal household. Xavier demonstrated his love as a devoted father, while the children excelled academically, suggesting a promising future. Agnès, in turn, was dedicated to instilling her deep Catholic faith in her offspring, frequently taking the family to Mass. To those outside the family, Agnès was seen as both kind and firm in her approach to raising her children. Around the year 2000, in line with the interests and preferences of the Dupont de Ligonnès clan, Xavier made the decision to relocate his family to the United States. As a discreet, charismatic, and multilingual man, Xavier believed he could blend seamlessly into American society. However, this venture ultimately failed, leading to significant financial losses for the family. Upon returning to France, Xavier began accumulating substantial debts related to his professional activities, which were always somewhat ambiguous. Various investigations have described him as a salesman, and French media reports indicate that money troubles had been a significant concern for Xavier for several years. One of his failed ventures included an unusual scheme to import cars from the United States to France, while he also started several small businesses, all of which saw limited success, including a hotel and restaurant guide for sales representatives, a customer loyalty system for restaurants, an association called the French Federation of Commerce, and a discreet business where he was listed as the manager. Xavier's various business ventures yielded minimal returns, and by 2003, he had hired 6 salespeople to assist him. However, Xavier's work often took him away from home from Monday to Friday, bringing in a meager annual income of around $4,200 in declared earnings. Gradually, the family's financial issues began to strain Xavier's marriage to Agnès, likely exacerbated by the typical disagreements that arise in any relationship. In 2004, Agnès wrote extensively on a French forum, detailing the challenges she and her husband faced. Notably, she mentioned that Xavier had once told her that a group death as a family wouldn't be catastrophic. By 2009, the increasing debts severely impacted their relationship, leading to a temporary separation. During this period, Xavier sent numerous letters blaming Agnès for the family's troubles and holding her responsible for their financial ruin. This emotional turmoil took a toll on Agnès, causing her to lose her appetite and struggle with insomnia on numerous occasions. In his time of need, Xavier turned to his friend Emmanuel for assistance. Hailing from a wealthy family, Emmanuel had inherited a substantial fortune from his father. Despite his wealth, Emmanuel lived modestly in a small apartment, an enigmatic and somewhat eccentric individual. He never hesitated to lend Xavier significant sums of money, in addition to funding Xavier's travels and even co-signing for the house, where Xavier eventually settled with his family in the late 2000s. Thanks to Emmanuel's generosity, the family resided in a chalet located in the suburbs at 55 Boulevard Robert Schumann, west of Nantes. Settled in their new home, the neighbors quickly formed the impression that Agnès was bosier and less pleasant than her husband. Behind closed doors, however, Agnès faced a personal hell. She viewed Xavier as both too fragile and paradoxically too rigid, an old-fashioned man who played the head of the household but was emotionally distant, lacking tenderness and affection, and sometimes even abusive. Furthermore, Agnès confided in her friends from the Thursday prayer group about her fears of how her mother-in-law, Geneviève, controlled Xavier. She described her mother-in-law as a mentally ill mystic, and Agnès was deeply afraid. On January 20th, 2011, Bernard, Xavier's father, passed away. Given the disparity between his lifestyle and financial difficulties, Xavier hoped his father's death would result in an inheritance. However, he was in for a shock upon delving into his father's estate, as he found nothing substantial. Only a few papers, a rifle, a card, a ring, and some cash, which Xavier promptly took. Within hours of Bernard's death, Xavier withdrew cash using his father's card. On February 2nd, he acquired a firearms license, and by March 12th, he had purchased a silencer for the rifle. During this period, he also bought quicklime and practiced shooting the rifle in his garden, aiming at a balloon on a stand. Emmanuel, who was visiting, tried the rifle and saw nothing suspicious, as Xavier explained that the silencer was to avoid disturbing the neighbors. On Friday, April 1st, the two friends went to a shooting range together, where Bernard's inherited rifle was a focal point of interest. The following day, Emmanuel called Xavier 5 times, and they spoke for nearly an hour. Investigation suggests that the horror began on Sunday, April 3rd. That night, Xavier, Agnès, and their children went to the movies and later enjoyed a pleasant evening dining at a restaurant with everyone present except for Thomas, who was studying at a Catholic university and lived in a nearby student hostel. After their night out, the family returned to their chalet, where neighbors saw them, and some family members even exchanged text messages with friends and acquaintances. Xavier messaged Christine, telling her about their dinner outing. The most accepted theory is that Xavier drugged his wife and children, waited until they were asleep, then shot them and buried them in the garden, also doing the same to the family's 2 Labrador dogs. Xavier's alibi was as murky as his actions, and on Monday morning, he began contacting people related to his family circle. As early as 6 a.m. on Monday, April 4th, Xavier began contacting people related to his family. He called Agnes's workplace to say she was sick and contacted the children's schools, claiming that Arthur, Agnes's son from a previous relationship, had a motorcycle accident and that Anne and Benoit were ill. By midday, he had sent a letter to the restaurant where Arthur worked, saying Arthur was resigning because his father had been transferred to Australia. Xavier still had to deal with Thomas, his eldest son. On that same Monday, April 4th, Xavier contacted Thomas and had dinner with him at a restaurant near his university residence. After the meal, a tired Thomas returned to his room. The following day, Thomas received an urgent message from his father, claiming that Agnès had a bicycle accident and was in a mild coma at a hospital, prompting Thomas to travel immediately to Nantes. It is presumed that Xavier killed Thomas in the same manner as his siblings and mother. Later that evening, Emmanuel spoke with Xavier again, and this time they talked for just under 19 minutes. At midnight, a friend of Thomas received a message from him stating he was home watching a movie with his father. Thomas was likely already dead by then. About an hour later, Xavier sent an email to Emmanuel, arranging to meet soon. Emmanuel replied, reminding Xavier that he had power of attorney and that the key was on the sailboat. Contrary to what one might expect, Xavier did not act discreetly. He went in and out of his house, even leaving a note on the door asking not to deliver any more mail. Instead of hiding, he withdrew cash from ATMs, and his image was captured by security cameras. He paid with his credit cards at restaurants and stayed in hotels under his real name, as if his perfect escape had begun. Gradually, the concerned neighbors noticed troubling signs. The once open windows of the chalet had been closed for days. The local children no longer saw the family's 4 children, the dogs' barking had ceased, and Agnès hadn't returned to work. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. Piecing together the clues, the concerned neighbors contacted the authorities. Upon arrival, officers found a nearly empty refrigerator with only a few jars of preserves, a still damp mop in the kitchen, a chest set on the living room table, and guitars on a sofa. It seemed the Dupont de Ligonnès family had vanished. The scene was eerie, with beds stripped of sheets, picture frames empty, and closets with missing clothes. In the midst of the mystery, on April 9th, a letter surfaced, sent to family and friends. It claimed that Xavier had been hired by the US Drug Enforcement Administration and that the family had to leave undercover as part of a witness protection program, explaining their sudden disappearance and lack of communication. Suspicion and worry grew among the neighbors, who felt there was something off about this story and feared for the family's lives. They urged the authorities to investigate further. Meanwhile, Xavier embarked on a journey through southern France in his car. As the case gained media attention, more details from the past emerged. On April 15th, security cameras captured Xavier entering a small hotel near Cannes. He parked his car, took a bag, and disappeared into the nearby woods. This was the last confirmed sighting of him. Curiously, on that same day, Emmanuel called his mother, revealing deep secrets. He was homosexual, alcoholic, and depressed. Responding to the neighbors' pleas and lack of leads, the authorities revisited the family home on April 21, 2011. A freshly disturbed patch of earth under a terrace caught an officer's attention. They soon uncovered a concrete slab, and moments later, made a grim discovery. The bodies of Agnès and her 4 children were found, wrapped in bags, each with 2 to 3 gunshot wounds, and covered in religious symbols. They had been meticulously buried in burlap sacks with quicklime. The family's 2 Labradors were also found buried. Despite the thorough search, no traces of blood, fingerprints, or DNA were found. Xavier became the most wanted man in France, accused of the massacre. His face dominated the news, earning him titles such as the most wanted man, the Nantes killer, and the face of horror. Yet it seemed he had mysteriously vanished from the face of the earth. The autopsy results of the 5 bodies revealed to the authorities that they were dealing with a meticulously planned execution, as most of the bullets had been fired at close range. The victims were shot in the head, and traces of a sedative were found in the children, confirming they were attacked while sleeping. Investigators found a startling detail. The device Agnès used to manage her sleep apnea had stopped functioning at precisely 3:27 a.m. Investigators speculated that Xavier may have hesitated to kill Thomas, the heir to the family name, due to the close bond between Xavier and Emmanuel. Emmanuel was initially cooperative, expressing belief that Xavier's disappearance was a pilgrimage before suicide. However, when questioned about the rifle, Emmanuel initially denied knowledge of it, before deeper investigation revealed inconsistencies in his story. A major development occurred 24 hours later when police searched Emmanuel's apartment and confiscated his laptop. This uncovered extensive correspondence between Emmanuel and Xavier, ranging from mundane to philosophical, with some emails hinting at a peculiar relationship. One email from early April 6th particularly caught the police's attention. These details led investigators to suspect Emmanuel may have assisted Xavier's escape. However, Xavier's wife Christine and her associate JVV were also evasive during questioning, denying knowledge of the secretive Church of Philadelphia sect. The investigators later discovered a complaint filed by former sect members who had fled in fear after Christine proposed having sex with all the men to conceive a chosen one. Despite extensive efforts, including monitoring the sect's followers, no definitive leads emerged. Xavier's cell phone records allowed tracing his movements, but the last concrete trace was a security recording on April 15th, where he was seen possibly carrying a weapon. Exhaustive searches found no body, leading to a theory he may have escaped by boat. An international arrest warrant was issued, but the investigation remained uncertain. Coincidences and inconsistencies continued to surface, such as an unusual check from Emmanuel to an account in Monaco. Authorities also raided a monastery and airport based on tips, but the sightings proved mistaken. Many years have passed, but killer Xavier is still free and out of justice. With his abominable sins, Xavier has killing his wife and 4 children, dismembering their bodies and evading justice. He must bear full responsibility according to the law. Such heinous crimes are completely unacceptable and must be severely punished under the law. Authorities should prosecute the most serious criminal offenses possible, including premeditated murder, desecration of human remains, and any other related offenses. Depending on the jurisdiction, he could face life imprisonment or even the death penalty for such heinous acts. In addition to criminal proceedings, Xavier must also be forced to fully compensate the victim's family. They have suffered an unimaginable tragedy and must be given the necessary psychological, emotional, and legal support to cope with this tragic loss. The law must be enforced and justice must be served quickly and decisively. No one has the right to take the lives of innocent people, especially the lives of their own family members. Xavier's actions are absolutely reprehensible, and he must be held responsible to the fullest extent possible under the law. I hope authorities can locate and arrest Xavier so he can face the consequences of his horrific crimes. The victims and their loved ones deserve closure, healing, and the knowledge that such atrocities will not be tolerated by society.